Hello, lovies. Welcome back to the LCMHC Mystic Musings. How I've missed you. If you're new to this corner of space, welcome. This podcast exists to create a sacred corner of the world where mind and mystery sit together, where healing becomes multidimensional, and where your inner world is honored as deeply as your outer one. And my hope is that each time you listen, you feel more seen, more connected, and gently reminded that you are everything and nothing less. Let me introduce myself. I'm Christine Frisebo, a licensed clinical mental health counselor, an energy conduit, hypnotherapist, Jungian shamanic practitioner, yoga instructor, mystic mother, and a lifelong seeker of the alchemy between psychology and spirituality. I am also and always your LCMHC mystic. I want to offer deep gratitude to my followers, to subscribers, listeners, donors, and supporters who help this sacred corner reach a wider circle. Your presence here matters more than you know. Deeply, deeply thank you. In today's episode, I'm diving into the semantics of the word healing and also casually introducing a therapeutic modality I have been working on birthing for years now. I am so excited for you to be here and welcome. So where did this idea come from? It came from my own therapy room, working with several clients, and it moved me so much that it's honestly begun an entire shift of perspective. You can check out my blog as well. I've also dived into this topic about what I'm discussing today in regards to stop chasing healing. So get ready, buckle up, we are diving in now. Okay, so you think you need to be healed. I got news for you. You don't. Because healing is automatic, nurturing is what's intentional, and we're going to get into that. So as I'm talking, I'm saying all of this as a therapist. Healing is one of those most overused words in wellness. And somewhere along the way, I feel as though it stopped being sacred and started being sold. And I'm sorry if I'm calling anyone out. This is a discussion that is meant to be a little controversial. So, not to poke fun. But over the years, I have seen it become, the word healing, become something we perform, something we announce, we optimize. You know, I've even said it. You know, you're hearing, I'm healing, I'm on my healing journey, like all of those catchphrases. And I'm not going to talk badly about that. I love that. I love when someone jumps on that train of like, I'm focusing on myself, right? Because that's what the healing journey is about. It's you're bringing attention where you're like, I can focus on myself. I can focus on what matters. And that's taking care of myself. And that's needed, right? But I do think that it gets exploited. And so in this talk, I want to go into that more. You know, I feel like healing, especially the word healing, it's been cheapened by urgency and branding. And that really stings when I say it. But my neurodivergent mouth is going to say it anyway. So, because what I think it's important. So, because I feel underneath all of that urgency is really an assumption that we're broken. So the idea of saying like, oh, like I'm healing, or like you need to be healed, or this and that, I feel as though like there's this kind of underlining assumption, and not all the time, you know, but it's like there's this underlining assumption that we're broken and we need to be fixed. And if you know me at all, something I say all the time is, no, you're not broken. Like you know, not. So we're going to explore some of these semantics, like the healing journey, when will I be healed, or like calling ourselves healers. And what I do notice is that in your mind and your body, like, what do you hear when you hear me say those things? So when I say, I'm on my healing journey, why aren't I healing? Or I'm a healer. Whether you say it, I'm a healer, or you hear someone say, I'm a healer. What do you notice in your body? What do you notice in your mind when you hear that? Because I'm going to tell you my automatic response that I experience now is that when I hear those things, I think, what, like, it all of a sudden becomes, I'm trying to find the right words here, right? So my automatic response when I hear that, I hear no. It's a whole sentence. I hear no. And I've spent many years calling myself a healer or a facilitator of healing. And now that I have this new perspective, I honestly feel uncomfortable saying that about myself. Like, I feel uncomfortable, like, saying I'm a healer or I'm a facilitator of healing. Like, so I'm shifting that. Like, I'm not doing that word anymore. And again, this is not to point fingers. This is not to say that other people should take on my perspective on this. This is just a new perspective to meander on and, like, ponder. So after this experience that I had working with my clients, all of a sudden was like, wow, okay, I'm uncomfortable calling myself a healer, and I'm not doing that anymore. So reflecting on, that, I feel as though we have healing, it kind of states broken, which then turns into fixable, which then can correlate to incomplete or behind. And I just can't subscribe to that. To the idea that we're broken and we need to be fixed because our parts are incomplete, and that's this feeling of feeling behind. I can't do it. I just can't do it. So I'm shifting my perspective, and I am no longer viewing healing as something we do. So do I think that we're cracked, wounded? Yeah. I do. I think that we have cracks and wounds, and I think that's part of life, and I think that's wonderful because it makes us these beautiful creatures. Misalignment? Oh, absolutely. I think we're all misaligned at some point, and I think that, again, all has a purpose to that. But broken? No, I don't think that we're broken at all. So a key line I want to emphasize as I continue talking is living systems reorganize towards balance. And that's a biological law. So we know that I like to bridge psychology and spirituality, all of that together. So a little psychoeducation. I want to talk about 4 items: homeostasis, neuroplasticity, polyvagal theory, and trauma-informed lenses. So, and I'm going to be super brief with this. Homeostasis. The body recalibrates constantly. Like, our body is always trying to, like, find its homeostasis, its equilibrium. Like, that is just a natural state of being for our body. Neuroplasticity, happening automatically too. The brain rewires with experience and environment. So that whole saying around, like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, it's actually a lie. You can. So that's pretty cool. And then polyvagal theory, we have this nervous system scan for safety. Regulation occurs when conditions are allowed. So polyvagal theory is something that, like, could be a whole other podcast. So I'm not going to get into that, but just something for you to, like, go down rabbit holes for yourself. And then obviously tying in the trauma-informed lens, hypervigilance, that equals protection, dissociation equals protection, control equals protection, numbness equals protection. So all of that plays a role, and none of this is brokenness. This is intelligence under pressure. And I talk about this more in my podcast on DID, which I'm going to edit that one and get that one out later this week or next week. But again, we're not broken. So if you recognize that our systems are always reorganizing, what do we actually have to chase? Like, we don't have to chase healing. We really don't have to. But what do we actually have to do? So let's shift gears. Quick backstory, which I'm going to read an excerpt from my blog post about this. This realization around stop chasing healing, This realization did not begin as a theory. It began in a therapy room. It became a theme throughout the entire day. In one session, I was sitting with a client who had lost her child at birth. There are no words for this kind of grief. And in our sessions, she said, I am so sick of hearing, "You're healing." What does that even mean? As if healing means erasing, as if moving forward means making it tidy. This is unspeakable. This isn't something we fix. It's not something we learn to carry. And everything in me went quiet. Because all of a sudden something clicked and my perspective shifted. She was grieving, she was surviving, she was breathing through the unthinkable. And then later in the day, I had another client who said similar to the same thing. I'm so tired of having to heal for everyone else. She had been parentified her whole life. When she talked about her family that day, she was exhausted from feeling like her healing wasn't her own, but a responsibility for individuals that scrutinize all her actions. And healing began to feel like resentment, and that is the opposite of what healing is often framed as. Healing for these clients in those moments felt like pressure, like expectation, like someone trying to rush pain into something inspirational or for the gain of others. So that's the excerpt from my blog that I wrote in response to this podcast. And so some key reflections here is that in those sessions, healing felt like pressure. It felt like obligation for my clients, as if they had some kind of control over it and dictate how it happens. And that's just not the case. So let's breathe for a second. I want you to pause. I want you to think about some times in your life where even you might have felt this, where you felt like you needed to rush your healing, where you felt like you needed to do it for everybody else. Just ponder that. You don't have to sit with it too long, but just ponder. So in that, this leads me to grief. And grief does not feel like healing, but it doesn't mean that it's not a part of it. What grief can feel like is disorienting, like a rupture, and it's body deep. And so when we reframe, because even then, the nervous system is metabolizing, the psyche is still adapting, and integration is still occurring. And that does not have to look inspirational, does not gotta look clean, because guess what? Growing hurts, healing hurts, and how we nurture ourselves. So this is the part. This is the part where it's like, well, what do we actually do? So if we stop chasing healing, what do we actually do? It's nurture. It's how we nurture ourselves and the parts. And that will help with the level of healing that is already happening in your body. Okay? So healing versus nature. I'm going to repeat something that I said earlier. Healing is automatic. Nurture is intentional. And I want to unpack that. Because you cannot force healing. You can't. And you can't perform it either. You don't rush it. But what you do is you choose the conditions. And I'm going to mention what conditions are in a second here. But I really want to hone in on this fact, is that healing is something that is happening all the time. Your body is healing without you having to do a dang thing. Think about when you skin your knee. Are you the one like creating the scab and having to do it? No. Your body is naturally healing. So the idea that our psyche and our emotional body and all of that stuff is not doing the same dang thing where it's healing, it is like, that is just an automatic thing. It's automatic. But how we tend to things, how we nurture things will dictate how things heal, right? So if you have like this I'm going to go with the body because it's an easy example. So if you have this horrid gash, right? This horrid gash happens and you're like, whatever. And you just leave it alone. And you leave, like, it just gets, it gets infected. You're not doing anything to it. It's still trying to heal. That healing, but it's healing in misalignment. It like hurts. It's festering. Like, it's not healing to the best of its capability because it's not being nurtured. But when you pause and you nurture it and you give it the antibiotic ointments it needs, the salve, you bandage it with care, and you take the bandage off when it's ready for air. There might be a scar, but not nearly as gnarly as it could be. And what's also interesting is that you can actually work on healing scars like that. Like you can do that. The body is always healing, right? So going back to the you can choose conditions statement, that's the nurture part. How do we do that? Well, in the mental health world, I'm going to tell you, we're going to work on boundaries. We're going to work on you understanding what your boundaries are, deal breakers, how you set those up, what you do with that. It's also going to look like rest. How do you rest? What does that look like to you? It also is leaving threatening environments and learning how to do that. It is attunement. Attunement to what you ask, to yourself, to what is like what in your moment, whether it's spiritual, whether it's energetic, like it's attuning to the frequency, the highest frequency of you and whatever that's going to look like. It's slowing the pace down and letting healing happen in a safe enough system. Right? So healing is what happens when systems feel safe enough, right? Nurturing. Like nurturing is what happens when I'm getting all kinds of tongue tied here. So healing is always happening, but when you nurture it, how healing happens is dictated by the way systems feel safe. So let that all just kind of marinate with you guys for a minute. And as you marinate, I'd like to softly introduce this new therapeutic modality that I've been working on because it relates to this topic. And it's ASRM. It's the Atrium Somatic Resonance Method. And it's a stewardship of the psyche. And again, I don't want this to sound like a pitch or anything. I just want to plant some seeds here because it correlates with this whole idea of, oh, I have to heal. Well, no, you don't have to heal. So in my work, I've really began to embrace that the psyche is less as something fractured and more as something that's organized, layered, and adaptive. And again, semantics, like I said, we're working with semantics, so we can absolutely debunk everything that I'm saying in this podcast. But for the sake of not having an argument, just kind of throwing more perspectives out there, within this modality, we have this center. And at the center is that atrium. And it doesn't need healing because it was never broken. It is unmarred. In IFS, they call that the unmarred self. In depth psychology, they call it Godhead energy. But yeah, so in the center of this modality is you have this atrium, that's sanctuary. And it doesn't need to heal. It knows how to heal. And you can't, nothing can harm it. And on the outside of the atrium are these rings. They're these decade rings, these psyche decade rings, and they're protective rings of development. And there's all these adaptive layers, obviously. And on the rings, you find these echo markers. And these echo markers are beacons. And what we might label as damaged, they're actually like protective structures. And so the echo markers are communication codes. And when we go and we work with those echo markers and like change the frequency of those things, and we nurture those echo markers and we change the dissonance to more resonance, that's stewardship, not fixing, stewardship, we're now creating conditions for the atrium to function even better at its core. And there's so much more to this modality that I'm leaving out, but this is like what I want to bring up, because again, it signifies that you don't have to force healing, man. We just got to go nurture. We got to go nurture those things. You go nurture those moments. You nurture the echo markers. And those echo markers can literally be memories. They can be former selves. Shoot, they can even be like when I do hypnosis, I do past life regression work. You can notice there's so many layers to these things. And it's really, really awesome. And so when you start noticing that I don't have to do the work to heal, that at my core, I know how to do that and I can do that. And as I nurture these different things within my psyche and with my decades, I can shift how that core healing can accelerate, because you're creating more safety for natural reorganization. Now, why does this whole discussion matter around stop chasing healing, around being intentional with nurturing? It gently addresses some big things. Healing as a social media currency, monetizing trauma. Ooh, I don't like saying that. The generational healing trend, which I think is important. Like, again, I'm not going to knock that. And this whole upgrade culture stuff. That's what this discussion that I'm bringing to matters to bring up. It addresses these things. I'm not saying that this is like, we have to stop with the whole like, oh, stop saying healing. Like, I'm just saying, like, let's be aware of the other side, the flip side of the coin. And so a key line, when you chase something, you position yourself as if you're lacking it. Chasing, it implies distance, and meaning that there's an arrival point, that's an achievement. And also with chasing, that also implies like racing. So it's like you could be behind, right? And it's not a race. So the belief in regards to healing and how you view the healing journey or healing industry or just your own healing, what healing is, what environment are you living in when you hear the word healing? And then what pace am I forcing? Am I forcing this idea that I have to heal? Am I ignoring this idea? Like, where are you at? And then what relationships keep my system in threat? What narratives am I rehearsing? And just ponder that. And then I'm going to ask you, this is the CBT part of me. What does my nervous system need this week? And just sit with that. I did make an accompanying hypnosis meditation for this. So if you hop over to my YouTube, it's there. It's called Stop Chasing Healing. But yeah, I'd really would like to challenge you to just consider that maybe you don't have to think of healing as something you have to do, as something of like, oh, I just naturally do that. But how can I nurture? How can I tend to? How can I steward? Okay? So thanks for hanging out and listening to me talk for a little bit. I greatly appreciate you so much. And remember, you are not a self-improvement project. You are a living system. Oh, that's so cool. You're a living system, and living systems don't need fixing. What they need is they need tending, nurturing. They need containment, safety, and attunement. Okay? So maybe the problem isn't healing. Maybe the problem is how we've framed it. So maybe you don't need to be healed. Maybe you just need to be cared for and tended to. Thanks, guys. If this resonates with you, I'd love to hear what shifted. And if you're curious about the framework I mentioned, the atrium somatic resonance method, I'll share more about that soon. But as of right now, it's just an invitation for you to ponder. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. And until next time, you know what I'm going to say? You are everything and nothing less. Thank you for joining me today on the LCMHC Mystic Musings. If this musing resonated, follow the podcast wherever you listen, and you can connect with me at merkabasacredhealing.com or on my social medias at the LCMHC Mystic. Deep gratitude to those who support this work and help this sacred corner reach a wider circle. Big, big love.